So now from here I am explaining the Docker in a most simplest possible way you can understand. So when you go next steps, you will feel what I told in the first day was not this. Okay, what I'm trying to tell you is certain things I'm going to explain here, not 100% technically accurate, but over 90% accurate. Why I'm telling this way? So that is the most simplest way you can understand it. Okay, what with the like kind of next 1 or 2 sessions we are talking about the Docker. When we really practically do the Docker, then you realize, okay, this is what he mean by this. Okay, because to make it simple, I'm explaining things in a little different way, but when you get the Docker really hands on, then you realize what it is. So now we discuss, we have the Docker, right? Docker is nothing but an image. Just think like that. Image is not a photo, but image. You can take the hard drive image or something like that. How the Docker works, normally, if you get the local environment, right? If you get let's say you get a hardware box, the server, and you want to put the Docker on top of this. What you can do is, you have your hardware box, right? Hardware, and on top of this, you need to have operating system. Okay, on top of this, you have to have operating system. So now operating system natively don't understand the Docker, because we learn operating system is just a kernel with some bunch of tools. So now what we do is, we put something called Docker engine on top of this. Okay, Docker engine. What the Docker engine does is, it is do this brokering thing between the Dockers and the operating system. Okay, Dockers and the operating system. This Docker engine is come in a different ways. For example, Linux, you can directly install the Docker engine on top of the natively on top of the operating system. But if you get Windows, you need something called Docker desktop. Latest one is a Docker desktop. There was a previous one called something, I don't remember the name, right? There was something. Anyway, you can think something you need to install on top of the Docker. Since few years back, till few years back, this was free, but now this is not free for commercial use, but it's still free for personal use, but not free for commercial use. Okay, it's a $5 license or something like that. Docker engine. So what this does is, this do the communication between your Dockers and this. So now on top of this, you create your Dockers. Right? On top of this, you create your Dockers. Okay. So if you zoom into the Docker, this one, right? If you zoom into this one, what you will see is something with the basic OS kernel. That's what I say, may not be exactly true, correct technically, because this may not be just the kernel, something like that, right? We are learning about how this works, where it's coming from, right? And then you probably install some networking libraries. These are optional, right? And then you have your configurations and other dependency libraries. For example, if it's Java, some Java is the main one. If it is a Node, some NPM packages, libraries, and your application. Okay, so these layers are not fixed, right? You need JRE install on this one, and then do it. But if you Node program, you don't need heavy libraries. You just need Node install, and then on top of that, you can put your application. Okay, you can put your application. So now how this Docker works is, Docker has something called Dockerfile, right? Dockerfile. Dockerfile is the kind of, not the birth certificate, but kind of a destiny of the Docker. That is, there the way we write everything, where this Docker coming from, what this Docker has, and what it does. Everything is inside the Docker file. This is called manifest file type of thing. Right? So this Docker file is the one we create the Docker. So what we need to do is, in the Docker file, first we need to tell from where this Docker coming from. Okay, from where? That is the required thing to do. What I mean by that is this. Let's say you need native Docker, not the native. Yeah, let's go that way, right? You need some Docker, like a virgin Docker, nothing happened, right? Fully virgin Docker, nothing happened. So you might say Docker from Ubuntu latest. Okay, when you put this colon, this is a version. We don't say it's a version, it's a tag, right? This one we call as a tag, right? From Ubuntu this. Again, we are going to discuss little while later, because in Ubuntu also there are different flavors of Dockers. You need to say from. Okay, from. So now if you build this Docker, you have other Ubuntu Docker. Why you didn't put anything on top of that? Right? And now on top of this one, right, what I need is, I need to do apt install. I'm not writing the exact step of installing, just to understand. Node latest, no, sorry, node 20. Node 20. Now if I build the Docker, I have a Docker which is node installed. Now I can run in, if I take this Docker, can I run a node program? No, I cannot. Why? Because it doesn't know about the node. It's a bare minimum, this one, right? So now, if we do this one, now what you can do is, you can put a Node.js code on top of that and you can run it. Now, let's create a Docker. I'm going to run from Ubuntu latest. Okay. So how we can, so now this is where this is going on, inside of whatever I'm writing here, these are inside the Docker file. Okay. So I put this one and I give this command, right? I give this command, docker build -t my Docker. We can learn about this command later, but just think this is how you can build the Docker. The output will be a Docker image called myd. Output will be a Docker image called myd, right? So now what I can do is, now I can run this using Docker run myd. There are a few switches you need to provide, because I can go there later, but for now just think this, right? So now I get this, I build a new Docker, now I am running myd. Myd, even though this Docker name is a myd, behind this, who is there? Is Ubuntu. It's a virgin Ubuntu, nothing happened to that, nothing be installed. That is a case one. Okay. So that is the case 1. Right? Now the second one we are going to do is this. From Ubuntu latest run this command's not exactly correct. Don't type it and try to run, it won't work, right? So run apt install node, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to again create the Docker build -t myd2. And when you say dot, it means refer the Docker file on the current location. Because Docker file is what? The things we written. Now when I run this one, again need pass few switches. Now you have a Docker which install node. Okay, now install node. Now let's try this one. Okay, now let's try this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write other Docker file from myd. Okay, that is how Docker works. You get the Docker and you create your own Docker, then you can refer that Docker in a different file, right? From myd. Copy index.js. And just assume you have a JavaScript file to print hello world in the same location. Just assume that. Huh? Now you can learn this command later on. cmd node index.js. Okay. So now what we do is we build the Docker build -t my app and then Docker run my app. Okay, Docker run my app. So will this work or not? Will this work or not? Will it print the hello world or not? Harsha, what do you think? Will it work or not? You have only two answers. Either work, either not. No. Okay. Working. No. Yes, working. No. No if. No. 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 Okay. So why do you think it's working? Huh? Can't find any issues. What do you say? Working or working not working? No. Why not working? Sorry? No. This says what is your parent Docker? But this says what is the Docker you are creating now. So you need to run the Docker you create now. So this is correct. That's not wrong. So now it's working or not? I solved your problem. Now it's working or not? Working. What you said? Not working. Why not working? Now it's working. Okay. So you said no. Why not working? Okay. Exactly, yes. myd is coming from myd. myd is this, which doesn't have the node. It just have the Ubuntu. So plain Ubuntu cannot use to run a node. it doesn't know about the node. Okay, but if you do this, now it has the node, so now this will run. So that is how Docker works. Very simple, right? So when I say technically not correct, these are correct, right? The few things, when it's not exactly correct, I'll tell you which is not exactly correct, right? So this is how Docker works. You get the Docker, you put whatever you need, and then you get it to run. For example, in our project, we have something called base Docker. What the base Docker does is, we have basic node image, and then what we do is we security scan, we get the proper image, and we put all our npm libraries into that Docker image. All the npm certified libraries. And then in the build time, what we do is we copy your source code, what you are writing, and run. So now what happens is, let's say he's using some sort of a npm library, he creates some npm library, can steal our data and push into the npm.js and put into his code and just taking it. So now what he can do is he can export our data. But when the build time, it won't work. Why? Because we don't take your libraries. We take the libraries from the Docker image. For example, what we do is from node 20, right? Let's say that, okay? And then apt install, let's say certs, not the apt install, some certificate install, right? So I put a comment, install cert, copy node module. So these are the certified node modules that we have. Okay, what we do is we get a bomb, and then we get all those node modules, and then we security scan and everything, we freeze it and we put it there, right? No node module. So now we do a Docker build. -t rapid. So now we have a Docker called rapid. Now if you create a sales invoice service, in the your Dockerfile you have what? So now this come to here. In your Dockerfile, what you have? From rapid latest, copy src into current location, run npm run build. Okay, run npm run build. So now what we did? We didn't use the node, but when you say from node, we use the node, but we didn't use operating system. Why? Then this image published by the node already use operating system. That's why you don't build everything from the scratch always. You don't always create from operating system and down the road. Even for Java, you can get a Docker which is install the Java if you have the correct version or not. But that doesn't stop you to do that. You can take the Docker image from Ubuntu if you don't trust that Docker image, because sometime maybe someone can put miscellaneous script or some sort of a thing and some dangerous thing into the Docker and publish a Docker hub. You blindly get it and run on your cluster, can break everything, right? But luckily there are security tools you can scan. You can once you get the Docker, you can scan the Docker to see is there any hidden script or something in the Docker. That's possible. But if you don't trust that, what you can do is you can build from the scratch. Get from the operating system, install Java, install JRE, set up Java homes and everything, set up lib folders, and install Maven and get your libraries, and then you're done. So now we build a Docker, right? We got the from Ubuntu, and we run the Docker build command and we build the Docker. Okay. So once you build the Docker, what you call is a Docker image. Okay, Docker image. So when you give Docker run command, right? So this Docker come to the running state, right? This is in a stop state, right? So now it call container. Okay, now it's called container, right? So now when you give the Docker stop command, it become a image again. That's the life cycle of a Docker. You have a Docker image, you give the Docker run command, it become a container, and then you give the stop command, it become an image. Okay, so when you say I have, so I removed the Docker container, that is not exactly true. You cannot remove a running container. First you have to stop it, and then it become image, then you can remove the image. Okay, and this image is not running, right? So if someone say connect to my Docker image, no, you cannot do it. It cannot connect to a Docker image. It has to be a container to connect. So now, once you build a Docker, we have something called container registries. Right? Container registry. Container registry is nothing but a place or a repository where it holds the containers. Right? So this name itself little bit wrong, because container mean running image. But what we holding is actually image. Right? So that is what I mean. Technically, some things are not exactly correct, because container use interchangeably for images as well. But as long as you know what it is fine. Right? So this say container registry, don't think, okay, it has something is running. No, it just have images. But we don't say image registry. We say container registry, because interchangeably we are saying this is a Docker container. But technically container mean it is running. Okay, because it contains something. So now we have a container registry, right? So what we do is we do Docker pull, Docker pull. Let's say my D, right? I get it. Before pull, I have to give a push command. Okay. So now let's say from here, what I did. No, let's go this side. We have a Docker file. Inside the Docker file, what we have is from and all those things. Then what we do, Docker, tell me the command, build -t my D, right? So now Docker is getting built. It automatically tagging to latest. If not, you can say Docker tag. And then what you need to do is Docker push. Okay. Before that, you need to log into your repository, set up the repository, and everything has to be there. But just ignore that part and Docker push. Now from somewhere, another way in the world, other corner in the world, you can pull. Docker pull my D, and then you say Docker run, right? My D. So when we do the next time, we are learning there are few parameters need to pass. For example, you need to switch. You can give a name, you can set up the ports and everything. So now Docker is running. Now, if you want to stop the Docker, you can say Docker stop my D, right? And if you want to remove the Docker, because still this is a tangling, because this Docker is stopped, but it didn't remove from the Docker environment. So if you want, you can say Docker remove my D, right? Without removing, if you try to run again, it fail. If you are not removing, you need to do Docker start. If you want to start it back here, this stage, it should be start. That is the difference between start and the run. Run means you take the image into the Docker engine and run. So now you run the Docker, you stop the Docker. Still, Docker is inside the Docker engine, not the exact engine, the running environment. Okay. So now if you say run again, it trying to take that back. So it say no, sorry, this already exists. Right. So you need to remove, and if you completely remove the image from your local, when you pull it, it come to your local machine or wherever you run the command, it come. If you completely need to claim the space and remove, you can say docker remove image. There are some other commands, like for example, this is, we are going to talk about the layer Docker later on. So then you can have a layers cache on your machine. So there are some commands. These are not must you remember. Something called Docker prune, where you can claim your services. Because let's say when you run a Docker, sometimes if you have a low hard disk space, this get filled quickly, right? Then you can prune and claim your spaces. Okay, so these are kind of a little advanced command. I don't need. It's good if you can, but I'm not expecting you to remember all those things. But these basic commands must be hands-on, right? It is not to have a notepad and copy and paste, right? As I told, like we are going to have AWS practical one. Same way, we're going to have a Docker practical one. So you better practice it. Okay. So now, this is the Docker life cycle. Image, you run, become a container, and you stop, it become image again. So this is how you can take the Docker into your machine. You need to decide which container registry you use, right? Sometimes you use a Docker Hub, and here we use ECR, Elastic Container Registry, which is an AWS container registry. For Google, they have a registry. I think GitHub have I don't remember the GitHub have a container registry or not, but almost all cloud have a container registry separately. And you can host your private one even. In order to run the Docker, earlier we used to have a Docker toolbox installed in Windows, but now we need to install Docker desktop. Okay, so now this is a basic about the Docker. So there is a whole new day we need to discuss, probably day or two other, because Docker orchestration, right? Because there is something called Docker Swarm, Docker networking. So Docker Swarm is the where you kind of where the Docker runs, and that is kind of a competitor, not the competitor, parallel to Kubernetes. If you don't need the giant orchestration environment like a Kubernetes, you can go with the Docker Swarm. And we need to talk about that. And there's something called Docker network, whole new chapter how the Docker network works, because here you need to understand. Okay, so now when you open your laptop, it get a new IP address, right? You don't assign IP address, it get a new IP address that is working through a protocol called DHCP, right? Dynamic Host Control Protocol. Now DHCP server getting the IP address, giving the IP address based on your MAC address. MAC address is attached to your network interface, right? So now Docker have a real problem when the same Docker creating a multiple instances, so getting a network address. So there are so many things we need to discuss in this way, right? There are different way you can do MAC VLAN and different type bridge and different type of a network you can configure, right? So let's go for the next day. Docker to run, there has to be a process running inside that. When there is no process inside that, Docker get killed automatically. Okay, when the Docker start, it start properly, but if there is nothing is running inside that, it might get killed, right? And there are a few other commands you will see from this slide, right? Docker ps. So if you want to see what are the Docker running right now, you have a command called Docker ps -a. The process a mean switch, forget all. So that tells you what are the Dockers right now running on your machine. So when you run a Docker, if it is not giving you expected output, you can go and see, probably it say exited, right? And there is a way you can run the Docker and you go inside the Docker. and look around. Sometime, let's say you here in the Dockerfile, you create a folder structure called var log abc. You create a folder structure, right? So if you want to see whether abc folder is there, now some error is coming, it's not working. You are suspicious that abc folder is not there. You can use a docker exec command, and then you can go inside the Docker and see, look around, come back. Okay, so there are a few things we need to do in the next time.